Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session today. We have two universities presenting today. The way we have it laid out today is that University of Cincinnati is going first, and we are going to take the first 30 minutes. So we'll walk through our slides and give you an opportunity to ask us questions. If you have questions during the session, please go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll address it towards the end of the presentation. So, and then the UCAR will do its introductions after our first 30 minutes. So I am Kate Kimesekar and I'm from University of Cincinnati. I am the IT director in the Office of Research and have been the project lead for this Kuali implementation project. I am joined today by Jake Lester. He is the software application developer. I'll let him introduce himself and his role on this project.
Yeah, hopefully, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Is it just showing the presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm Jacob Lester. Like she said, I work in this Office of Research IT, and I'm a software developer. And primarily, I work in our competitive intelligence and interactive dashboarding with our sponsored research data. And I'm one of the few people on the core implementation team migrating from our old system to Kuali.
All right, so we wanted to start off with, Jake, am I able to move? I think you'll have to move the slides. So.
Yeah, I'll move the slides here. Yeah, so just if anyone has any questions, just post them in the chat. And then if they're easy to address at the current time, we'll address them. But if they're more long-winded answers, we'll address them at the end of the presentation, just so we have enough time.
Okay, so before we dive into the migration details, I just wanted to take a brief opportunity to walk through the size of our university and our research profile. So Jake, do you want to move a slide forward? Yeah, we are urban university, one of the leading ones within our region. We do a significant, like a $250,000 in award activity. As you can see on the right, most of our funding is federal funding. So we do heavily depend on sponsors like NIH and NSF. We do have a big College of Medicine. So NIH is our biggest funder within those opportunities that we go for. And then our engineering school and arts and sciences are NSF and DOD mostly. We submit about 1,600 proposals every year. Most of them are grants.gov since, federal has grants.gov. So, and then we have 24 colleges, not all of them are academic colleges, but they do some small activity with foundations for research. Our biggest colleges, like I said before, are engineering, arts and sciences, Catch, and some of them. We also do decentralized proposal submission. So a central office does smaller schools, but our bigger schools do their own proposal submissions. If you want to go to the next slide, Jay. So we did want to talk a little bit also about the research systems that we have on campus. So if you want to get to the next slide. We are currently using COES, and I'm not sure how many schools over here are aware of COES, but it was, Kuali was the next step from COES at the time when we were COES school. So we do use proposal development, institutional proposal, award, sub-award negotiation modules currently in COES, which we are planning on moving to Kuali. But just so that other universities, I'm sure, also use different products for different offices. We are one office, but different units, and each of the unit picks systems that work the best for them. So IRB and ICOC currently use Euron's system for the protocol management. Our COI, we are in the market right now to figure out a system. Right now, we're using a homegrown system. So our COI officers looking for budget and figuring out which system would be most suitable for them. And then for our accounting, financial accounting, we use SAP, which is kind of important because we do COES to SAP data migrations back and forth. So transfers. So we'll talk about that. Jake will go into details of that when we move to Kuali, what we're doing with that. So next slide. Yeah, why did we decide to migrate? So biggest reason was end of life for COES. There are no other newer versions of COES. It has a very old UIX. It's not very intuitive. There were two different interfaces to get to COES, and people always found that really confusing. We also implemented COES like 10 years back. At the time, we had a homegrown system. And even though we knew how we could have done things better, the users were not necessarily prepared for those steps. And with Kuali, we want to take that opportunity and move all the side processes or side systems that we have to be more integrated within Kuali. So I think those were our key reasons why we decided to migrate. And I mean, we'd been asking for a while, and we also got budget for it. So that was another reason why we decided to migrate. So if you want to move to the next slide, Jay. After migration, I mean, after budget was approved, I think we wanted to share our approach in how we wanted to handle the migration. So we were assigned a core team of 3 people. Project lead was myself, and then software developer is Jake, and then the subject matter expert is from our sponsored research area. And she was critical in figuring out how the business processes would change. So this was our core team. But like I talked about before, we have decentralized proposal submissions, which means we needed to connect with the users around the campus, keep them up to date, and also get their feedback on what we were thinking about. So, as many boots on the ground that we could get, and as many brainstorming sessions that we could have to figure out how we wanted to leverage the new functionality within Kuali to help the business processes to streamline and efficiently use the system. So we the remote work environment came along the same time, but university did get on like Teams and Microsoft products and licenses for that. So we created a specific team for the implementation, and we have about 60 users in that team. We try to keep people updated on it. We scheduled meetings to make sure that we heard from people, figure out what were drill down to figuring out what exact issues they were having, and then taking the discussion internally with sponsored research services and see how we can make things more streamlined and use the functionality within Kuali to better assist sponsored research administration. So I think with that, I'm going to let Jake take the presentation control. He's going to walk through the more critical details of migration and how we looked at the data. So Jake, do you want to go ahead and take control?
Yep. So we will, like she said, talk a little bit more of the technical, the data integration and migration side. So first, before we got everything set up, they had 2 separate environments. And so we had a staging environment, which was used to verify like the data integrity after each one of the 3 migrations. And then after each migration, they gave us a database extract that then we could look at locally and then ensure all the backend tables looked okay. And then in addition, we had a sandbox environment, and that was more for like playing around and testing and training users. So we could make, proposals and awards, just dummy data basically. And then along with that, we got a live read-only data replica, so that we could test like our custom reports that we have and our custom integration queries that we wrote. So as we made changes in the sandbox, we could query those live via the backend and make sure everything looked good in the tables. And then as far as data migrations, we had 3 scheduled. And so I'll kind of walk through what we were looking for at each step. So the migrating from COIUS to Kuali was actually facilitated a lot by the fact that most of the backend table names and the schemas were very similar. So it was a very natural transition from COIUS to Kuali. Thankfully, there wasn't a ton of new implementation details. It was more of just like, here's how we had it in COIUS. Now, like, where is it at in Kuali? There wasn't a lot of new terminology and stuff, which made it a lot easier for us. So the first round of data migration was really to develop a baseline for which fields and field mappings needed to be modified. Also, during this time, we addressed the current and potential business rules with our users. Like Casey said, we're a decentralized university in terms of submitting these proposals and getting awards. So we have a lot of units doing things different ways, and there's a lot of different business rules from the College of Medicine versus engineering. So we had to make sure to check with our business users to make sure that all of their processes were going to be implemented properly when we migrated to Kuali. In addition, the first round of data migration, we focused on the proposal development module, and then the second and third ones was the institutional proposal and the award module. So the first round was the proposal development module. And then we mapped fields, did that field level mapping to be used in the next migrations. We also identified post-migration task and then rewrote those reports and queries that we currently had out of COIUS to ensure that they will run properly and that all the database tables had all the right values. And so one of the little tips we had from our core team was that after this first migration is kind of where you need to get your configuration documents, like your drop-down field lists and your field value mappings. You want to get those finalized. You want to look at those and finalize and make changes as soon as possible after the first migration, so that the next two will be a lot more easy, a lot more effective. And then the second and third round of the data migrations was, again, this whole thing was kind of like an iterative, you do a migration, you check, what changed, what little things you need to do. So we had to record the bugs via those Kuali templates that they provided. And then we have weekly meetings with them to go over all the bugs and just keep track of their progress. And then again, we're testing the database queries that we have, testing the sandbox queries, and testing that everything came over in the migration in the staging environment. And again, updated field level mappings. And then if we noticed there were any like quirky things or little bugs, those will be included in like post-migration steps. And then, so as far as integrations, really the two big ones are HR integration and our finance integration. And so with our HR integration, we needed to identify the set of people in SAP that we'd like to feed into Kuali. And then along with that, which fields we need to map over. And then if there were any custom calculations, like salary calculations was kind of the big one. We identified those there. And then we utilized their Kuali's APIs in order to send nightly data pushes via XML. And they actually had really good, that this is a link here, I won't go to it, but when these slides, if they get shared, then you'll be able to click on that, and they have really good documentation about doing HR integration via their APIs. And another little tip here is that we had to work with a couple of teams in our university, like our main central IT and then our business core systems team. And one of the things we noted was that you want to get all your required teams, on board and communicating as soon and definitely as often as possible, so that you can ensure there are no hiccups and, that we request something and, there's not roadblocks. You don't want to request something and then it's, you wait a week or two for them to get back to you. You want to have, constant communication. So like Casey said, we were using Microsoft Teams and Microsoft OneDrive to do all our communication and file sharing. And then our next thing was the financial integration. Again, we were working with our central IT and our business core systems teams. And we explored using the Kuali like accounts module, but for our current setup in COEUS, it was going to be a lot easier if we kind of did like a custom integration via Python scripts in order to transfer like award and account information between the two systems. Again, this is another thing where we wanted to make sure you get all your teams on board as quickly and as often as possible. And so this few slides, I'm kind of going to walk through this diagram of how our financial integration is set up. So the first step, we have this Python script, create SAP files. And so that runs on a schedule at 10, 2, and 4. And it basically queries in the data replica that we had set up, and it queries for the account creations or account modifications. And so actually there's 3 separate queries we do. One is to get like the grants, like the metadata about the grant. The second one is to get the cost element information about the budget. And then the third one is getting your applicable rates. And so this first step sends those 3 queries and gets it back and then transforms it into 3 CSV files and outputs those to JScape landing zone. So JScape is basically like a shared file system, and it can receive and do like triggers as well. So we had the first script running on a schedule. It queries and then dumps the 3 CSV files to the shared location. And then that would trigger an SAP event. And that SAP process takes in those 3 CSV files and then creates or modifies the accounts accordingly. And then after that process runs, it's going to produce both success and error files. And it will dump those back into that shared file system, JScape. And then once those files are dumped in that shared location, it will trigger the next script to run. And that script, update kuali.py, that triggers and it ingests those success and error files. And then it goes and updates the awards and marks the award post as processed via Kuali REST API. And so if it was an account, if we needed to set up a new account in SAP, this script, if it was successful, then it would go and update the account number field on the award. And then if it was a modification to an already existing account, then it would go and mark. We put it in the modification field, and we marked it as like done or error. And Yeah. And then so this whole process runs every day at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. And then that is it as far as our data integration. So this last slide here, I'll let Katie take over about training.
So yeah, I just wanted to put those emojis out there because, you know, people just handle new systems so differently. Like some people are really excited about the new change, want to fix everything that they were doing. And some people just start missing the old system. They'd hated it in the past, but now they just start loving it. So yeah, a lot of emotions, also being like remote and not having that face-to-face time to convince them that it's going to be okay. It definitely is going to be harder. We are still like just starting in the last 2 months. Our subject matter expert has started doing some trainings. Initially, Kuali had said that they would come on campus, and you know, we've done this in the past when we launched course, where we would just have these sessions where we'd have people come in, hands-on sessions where we could help them out. But with COVID, that was not possible. Kuali offered to do remote trainings for us, and were okay if we recorded them. So we just recorded, learned from them how to do the trainings, and then used those recorded trainings before to get other users, because they said ideal size would be 10 or 11 people because we couldn't help everyone on that training. So and our users population is a whole lot more than that. So we first picked 10 people who first registered for the class. They did the training with the vendor, but we recorded that training. And then we offered that recording as a class to people, because we decided that if it was a recording, there was no point watching it together. So we said, hey guys, go ahead, over this week period time, listen to this recording. We opened a sandbox instance, and there were handouts where they could go through and do those proposals. And we gave them a link where they could tell us if they had any questions. And so we did a discussion session with them for people who had done the recordings and who had done the sandbox proposal. And then we talked about any issues they had. This was all done on the sponsored research side because there are a lot of business questions about how the budgets were done before and how they can be done in the newer system. So our subject matter expert is the one who is also going to be our trainer, and she was the one who conducted the sessions. We are also working with our HR. It's a new service they're offering where they're making this training material for us, which is going to be ADA compliant. So we don't have anything, but we are hoping by the time we release this, we should have some basic training material that we can share. And they had a whole thing about which ones should be videos, which ones should just be documents. And so as soon as we have that, we'll start sharing. So I guess we took like a multiple approach to it. We still do plan on doing one-on-one trainings or smaller classes of trainings, but just depends on how much time we are going to get once we go into production with Kuali. So our current date for going live is 26th of April, which is getting really close. We have started our communication with the users to let them know that we are going to have a downtime of about 1 week when COES or Kuali would not be available. So we are putting together all of that. And by next conference, we can tell you exactly how the Go Live event went. So I don't see any questions in the chat. I think we have 5 minutes before we can give it back to UCAR. So if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. If there are none, then Yuka, you are free to take over. All right, looks like no questions.
Okay.
Do you want me to, let me see if I can stop sharing.
Oh, there
here.
is a question in there.
Oh, I did just see that. Was your core team full-time? So I don't know if you want to take this over, Casey.
Not really. I mean, we did hire one person on each of the sites so that we could get more time on these projects. So I would say that we were around 50% on this project. Would that be fair enough, Jake?
Yeah,
your-
yeah, I would say so. Yeah, we were all definitely had other things going on at the same time. So none of us were ever full-time on this.
I think a whole lot of like this COVID situation also made it a whole lot harder for everyone. It felt like every single day there was a new plan of how we wanted to handle everything. So, but also I think everyone is more open and flexible today than they have been in the past. So I think that helped in some other ways where people were, much more okay with having team sessions, and that gave us a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, so I see another question about the Kuali SAP, the financial integration. So that was an on-prem solution, that JScape system that our central IT has set up. That is that needs to be in our own network. So they can actually trigger those Python scripts to run, and then go and connect to that shared location that's in our network. Basically, if we wanted to do it, maybe to like AWS or Azure or whatever, we would have to. It could definitely be doable. We would just need to have some sort of like secure gateway that passes those data connections to our private network. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, I guess. Oh, just curious, who provides the updated award budget to feed to SAP? Yeah, so the process, and we are just going to do the same thing that we did in COES because it was working efficiently. So we do strongly recommend people to create a full budget when they are in proposal development. So when the award comes in, our central office pulls the budget from PD over to awards. And then we let the department go in and make any tweaks to the budget depending on what award did we, it never is exactly matching to what we had initially proposed. So they can make those tweaks in the award module budget and then submit it to our central office. Central office reviews it and then marks it for transfer to SAP, so that then in SAP, the record gets created and we don't have to do the double data entry. So at least those fields move over. So our SAP grant administrators then review what they see, make any changes if they want. And then once that successfully is created, we just get a SAP account number back to us, and that gets fed in to Kuali, where it would say this Kuali award had this SAP account created. So that gets saved in both the systems. I hope I answered that question correctly. All right, I guess you can.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, welcome to the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, or UCAR, because that's a mouthful, presentation on our implementation experience with Kuali. I'm Kelly Langmeyer. I was project manager on the project, and I have with me Carolyn James, who is our cloud solution analyst. Carolyn, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Carolyn. I joined the team this summer just before we went live. And as the new cloud solutions analyst, I'm sort of the liaison between the developers and the business units. So I sort of translate the information and assist with the configurations. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Carolyn. So our mission at UCAR, we are a nonprofit consortium of more than 115 colleges and universities. And I'll let you go ahead and read that, but at UCAR, our vision is Earth System Science for a Better World. So we are not a college or university, we wanted to include some of our structure here. So our member colleges and universities elect the Board of Trustees, who then hire the UCAR president. So UCAR manages NCAR, which is the National Center for Atmospheric Research. And then our community programs provide a suite of innovative resources, tools, and services to researchers, educators, and practitioners in the Earth System Science community.
I wanted to share a few pictures of UCAR and our facilities. In the top left, we have our iconic IMPay NCAR Mesa Lab, which is located in the foothills west of Boulder, Colorado. And below that is the building I haven't been able to walk into in almost a year. So I thought I would include that. That's the Anthes building in the Foothills Lab. It's our administrative work site, and it's a LEED certified platinum building located in Northeast Boulder. And two of our tools for Earth System Science include the NCAR Wyoming Supercomputing Center with the Cheyenne supercomputer you can see in the top right, and on our NSF NCAR Gulfstream 5 aircraft, which is kind of cool. And a view of UCAR by the numbers. To give you an idea of the size of our company, because I think we're, not being a university, you may not be as familiar with UCAR, that and the size of our research portfolio, we had over 800 awards in last fiscal year with over 300 sponsors. And our total fiscal year 20 expenditures exceeded 236 million. And with about 1,400 staff, this includes all of our scientists, our programmers, our accountants, and all of us. So you may be asking, why Kuali Cloud? What's our business purpose? Well, our goal is really to provide a single cloud-based research administration system that enables proposal development, budget creation, investigator conflict of interest, and awards management, and remove the need to manage future software upgrades and to gain access to Kuali's continuous improvements. So where are we in this process? As many of you have experienced, it's a long migration. So in 2018, we were able to go live with the on-premise with awards. And just 2 months ago in December, we went live in the cloud with awards, and we added the investigator conflict of interest module. The COI module was a big change for our organization, as we were using a labor-intensive paper PDF process. So in our next phase will be to retire our legacy pre-award system and move into the cloud. This will permit us to take advantage of the strength of having one integrated system for pre-award and post-award. And that'll happen in the next 2 years.
Thanks, Carolyn. So how we got started going to the cloud. Kuali came on site back in 2019 for a week to conduct a fit gap analysis. This helped map out UCAR's current business processes to determine the gaps from our on-premise system and how we would go to the cloud. The outcome of the process compiled a list of gaps between UCAR's current systems and Kuali's current functionality, as well as documented the integrations UCAR maintained for our on-premise Kuali site. The analysis gave us the current state, the high-level requirements, opportunities, risks, and the next steps. So one of the first things we did was get our teams together. So we had our core team, which was made up of personnel mostly from contracts and IT, but also hit on other areas within the organization. This core team played a huge role in the requirements gathering, development, testing, and implementation of the cloud. Some of these people were full-time on the project, and others were trying to fit this in with their other priorities. So we also had a steering committee. We always reported the high-level activities, and they helped us keep on track to ensure that we were following the business case, and we were providing team support and guidance whenever we had questions. So they were a key part of this whole thing, just to keep us all in line and make sure that we were keeping the right goal in mind. Then, of course, we had SMEs from around the organization. Quite a few people that we went and talked to and gathered requirements, because as in a lot of other organizations, different labs and programs work differently. So we had to try to make the system work for everyone. So to try to eliminate some of these shadow systems that we had. We used Google Drive. We use that for our email and then our shared drives, and it works very well for us to keep track of all of our documents, have the latest versions, and the whole team is shared on that. We could also share it with the Kuali team so that we all had access to all the same documents. And then one of the key things we've done at UCAR is, as we have moved to cloud solutions, we've hired cloud solution analysts to help bridge the gap between the business services and IT. So as Carolyn explained in her role, they manage the applications configurations and service desk issues, and they're the face to the customer. So they're understanding the customer's needs and working with the vendors to ensure that the application works the best it can for our organization. So as we were developing this, we had several integrations. We have our Workday HR system, our library system. We had to pull some information from our proposal system, and then the finance and our data hub. So our developer worked very hard in getting all of these integrations together and working seamlessly. Of course, this took a lot of testing to run all of this through, but it is definitely a key part to making this all work. One of the lessons learned that we had was we found afterwards that if we would have had a visual of all of the processes and how they were all connected and working together, it would have gave the core team a better vision of seeing how this is all playing out, and it might have helped with some of our issues towards the end there. So definitely a lesson that we will bring towards our next phase of the project in bringing proposals to the cloud. We also were able to add another data migration just to help ensure and make the team comfortable with what was happening with the processes. So that really helped us. And Kuali was very flexible in allowing us to do those things. Oh, Carolyn, you're on mute.
I apologize. We've been able to involve our users throughout our implementation process. This was important for us. In the beginning, we reached out to our decentralized labs. They have been supportive of the process, a little leery, but definitely supportive and willing to share their individualized processes and work with us towards removing their silos and reducing, with the ultimate goal of reducing the need for their shadow systems. No one likes to do work twice. Change management has been a huge thing running through the entire project. We had a large need for change management due to change fatigue throughout the company. I'm sure many of us have the same experience. So we use change management to set appropriate expectations with our users for the timeline for deliverables, the introducing new functionality, and for user training. As we were getting ready with our user materials, we invited future users for user experience testing for the new conflict of interest module. So they were invited to complete tasks with very little instruction provided. So we used a verbal feedback where we walked a user through a complicated disclosure process and got their feedback on what the experience was like for them. We also provided a Google form where our volunteers worked through a series of tasks and provided qualitative feedback. And this information gathered enabled us to provide much better learning resources. Rather than us guessing where their stumbling blocks were and what they needed a little extra help with, we were able to get feedback from our users and provide better resources. For training, we had two types of training. Like University of Cincinnati, we had the vendor provide train the trainer and power user training. And then from that, we recorded our user training sessions and made those available on our internal website, along with our step-by-step guides we created in-house. And we're currently offering hands-on workshops with our users as they're completing their annual conflict of interest disclosures. And our newest module, and we keep talking about, is our conflict of interest. This is a huge business change for us from the labor-intensive paper PDF process to a system-driven process. While it's a welcome change for our users, it's still a change with change management needs. And the configuration details took several iterations to meet the capabilities of the module and our leadership needs for compliance. That took more iterations than we may have expected. We currently have a policy change in process to meet our compliance and transition to disclosing for all proposals. And the next thing I wanted to show you is our investigator COI process map. I'm sorry, it's rather small and might be difficult to read in this venue, but this map documents the actions which will prompt a new disclosure, automatic notifications, routing for review to completion, and at each step, which action is needed by which person or system. So we have 4 initiating actions which enter into the conflict of interest module. If a new award is entered into our proposals, if a new pending proposal is in our proposal system, if a new award is entered into Kuali Awards, if the researcher's annual disclosure is getting ready to expire, or they can self-initiate if the investigator has a new significant financial interest to disclose. And then it sort of works you through the process. And this has been really helpful for us to help our users know when should they have expected a notification from the system, should they not. And it sort of helps people flow through this new process, since it's no longer a paper process. Happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Carolyn. So of course, a key part of our implementation was the Kuali team. So Kat and Victor were excellent, supportive, responsive to our questions and concerns, and they were always our calming influence. So as we felt like our hair was on fire at different times, they took a deep breath and just walked us through it. And we're always willing and able to adapt things to find solutions where we couldn't see how to fix them. So they were great to work with. As I said before, they're very flexible. So we added that data migration to ensure that our users and our team were comfortable with the results. They always found ways to make the system work and to get some kind of workarounds if we needed it to work a certain way. They were also very willing to record all of their trainings, which help us because then we can go back and watch these things. We have one on the reporting, different processes for Carolyn, and it's just been very helpful to have those in our shared drives so that we can refer back to those. We're now phasing out of our weekly meetings, and we're supported with Zendesk, who has also been very supportive with any issues that we've had. So, and about a year ago, in February, Kat and her team came to Boulder to do our kickoff. And so this was pre-pandemic, but we ended up having a snowstorm in Boulder and they closed the campus. So instead of having our kickoff, we met for probably an hour, and at lunchtime they closed the campus. The Kuali team had to go back to their hotels. We all went home and we continued our kickoff for the next day and a half, just like we are for right now. So it was just a little start to our little pandemic. So our next steps, since we have put award and COI into the cloud, now we are starting to work on proposals and moving those into the cloud. This will be a large change for us because proposals are in a completely different system. So we'll be working with that to move that over, and we'll of course be working closely with Kuali on their budget redesign, because that is an important feature for us in making that work for us in order to be able to use Kuali the way that we need. And then how we will introduce these features and changes to our users. So, and as Carolyn mentioned with change management, that's always a challenge. So thank you. Any questions, please put them in the chat. And also I wanted to let you know there is a survey at the end if you want to fill that out. And otherwise, I think that is it, and we'll open it up to questions.
This is Chris at Colorado State University. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for sharing your experiences, both Cincinnati and UCAR. Welcome. And I look forward to having many conversations at the user groups on how you guys are doing what you're doing, especially budget.
Thank you, Chris. I've been enjoying the user community. I find it really supportive and helpful. There's a lot of useful guides, and just going to the meetings and getting to meet you in that forum has been really supportive.
Oh, there is a question. Carolyn, did you keep your COI form iterations?
No, we just sort of evolved it in the system. We went through a lot of testing in the sandbox. And so we would, before go live, we would work through, okay, so we need to ask these questions and we need to do this and we need this routing and we need to make sure these particular people can do the review. And then we would iterate and go through and say, well, hey, this person didn't get to see it. And so then we would just keep updating and continuing until we either realized we needed to change the process, the configuration in the system, or maybe we needed to actually change our policy. And so changing a policy in our company is a long process. And so it's going to take we're going to have to phase in some more changes in the next 6 months. So we're using the configuration spreadsheet that Victor and Kat set us up with to track, who has which permissions and which roles have which permissions and who's in which role. I've been impressed with the way they've helped us manage our data. So thank you, Victor. Thank you, Kat.
This is Carolyn Miller from University of Maryland. I saw the comment on the Zendesk, and I just wanted to emphasize that when we were doing our conversion, and especially when we were developing our documentation, the information in the Zendesk was just invaluable.
I agree. We often go to the Zendesk guides as the starting point for creating our user guides. We can modify it to our specific needs, but it is a wonderful resource, comprehensive resource.
Yeah, that's actually what we used to do our HR integration. There's an article on there about sending via XML, and it tells you the whole schema, and you can download an example file, and so you can kind of format all your data in the proper format, and then you just hit their endpoint and it just works.
Mm-hmm. I like that you can follow the guides, and so as they update and evolve over time, you'll get notified, so you don't have to just sort of wonder, has that changed? I find that a useful feature also.
And I realized that we didn't call out to our Kuali representatives. I know you guys did, but yes, Kat and Vit was the person that helped us, and they're incredible. They're always there, always walking us through. Like if we forget after 5 weeks what they taught us before, they'd like happily walk us through again, because it's just a lot. And then they're always also connecting us to other universities who have done things and processes that could be helpful for us. So they're super. Bess has helped us with training and testing as well, and that was fantastic. So big shout out to the team.
I want to thank you all for attending and listening to our presentations, and hopefully can use some advice and things that we learned from. So
Super helpful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Enjoy Kuali days.
It's been fun.